Hey everybody, and welcome to the 26th lesson of this RTS tutorial series. In this lesson, we'll be setting up our physics-based vehicle. So we'll be importing our mesh and making sure that we can select it. So in the next two videos, we'll be able to give that unit commands to move around the map. So that said, fire up your editor, and let's get started. Alright, so here we are back inside the editor. There's going to be a few changes since last time you might notice. First, I'm running with source control now. And I'm using source control because I've had to re-record a few of these, and rolling the material back to where it was earlier is a little bit hard without source control. So there might be some differences you'll see in the blueprints in this version that you don't have. If there are, pause the video at those points. Get your blueprint to match up with mine if you needed to, and then continue forward. I believe I have rolled back all the changes I've made, so I might have missed a couple of things. Alright, the very first thing we need to do is we need to import our car material. And this is going to be very simple, and in fact this is a useful tool to know overall. Let's say you wanted the starter content and you didn't have it. You could also import that in the same way, and that is any of the templates and any starter content that you were offered to include at the start, you can add to any project. The way you do that is you go to Add New, and then you go to the very top, Add Feature or Content Pack. Content packs will be your starter pack, the mobile and regular starter. And then you have your templates, both the blueprint and the C++ versions. We will use the blueprint feature, and we will take the vehicle. We'll hit Add to Project. You'll see it's doing all these things. It's unfortunately adding it to my source control, which by the way means you'll see these little tick marks in the corner of my things that might not be on yours. That is just a reference to me in relation to my source control. Alright, so as you can see, it's added two new folders. It's added vehicle and vehicle blueprint. We can close this out. We don't need to add anything else. And we're just going to go into vehicle. We're going to open up sedan, and that is not the one I wanted actually, but we will need the stuff from there in a second. Let's go to vehicle BP. Let's open up sedan again. This is the one I wanted. Alright, so we are going to copy this material into a new folder, which we're going to put into units. So let's go to units real quick, new folder, and we will call this ground vehicles. Alright, so from our blueprint we found earlier, from our sedan folder, which has a blueprint for the sedan and the physics that will help run the car, let's copy those over into the ground vehicles folder. So just drag and drop them. Copy here. Alright, so let's just go over there real quick, and let's save all. And I'm going to open up the sedan, and the first thing I'm going to do after I pin it into this thing is, well, we're going to delete all of this, but before we do, or you can go ahead and delete it all right now actually if you want, I'm just going to explain to you guys why this particular part is being done in so many lessons. Unlike the movement where we can say, hey, go from point A to point B, and the computer knows to walk the character from point A to point B, in our vehicle, in the physics that runs it, so this vehicle movement component here, there is no AI. There is no AI that recognizes what's in here and how to use it. We don't have set the speed to X. We don't have, destination is going to be blah. What we have instead is throttle input. So think about this axis value is how far forward someone's pressing down on the thumbstick on a game controller, or how far someone's pressing down on a pedal. How much pressure is being applied. Same with the steering wheel. How far over has that has the steering column been turned? How far has the joystick or the thumb control has been pressed a certain direction? So when we set our car's movement, we are setting it by setting these values. We're also doing so by saying if the handbrake is on or off. So it is a bit of a trick to work out how to get the car to move from one location to another. Alright, as I said, we can delete these, we don't need them. Which also means we can get rid of the references. And then we can delete everything. Say if we go to the viewport, we can delete all the cameras and all the text. The text literally just says the speed and the gear the car is in. We've already deleted the code that makes the text work, so it doesn't really matter. Alright, finally we can delete all these extra variables that we do not need. Alright, now with those deleted, just compile, make sure that it is actually fully empty. What we are going to do is we are going to highlight the mesh. We are going to do add component, and we're going to do decal. Now the great part about today's lesson, a lot of what we are doing from this point forward is copying work we've already done. And we're going to name this decal Selected Decal. In fact, actually, let's open up the work we're going to copy. Let's go to our units folder and open up our ground unit master. Speaking of which, that reminds me, we need to rename our sedan. That should have been the first thing I did before I started deleting things from it. So we just want to make sure that we had the right name. It's be Selected Decal. And indeed, we do have the same name, Selected Decal. Alright, let's go back to that folder real quick and just rename our sedan. So if you go to your sedan that you have, it will rename it RTS underscore ground vehicle master. So this will be the master file that will sort of, or master template for all ground vehicles we use in our RTS. So let's go back to that ground unit. And let's change this decal size. Well, size we're going to change it to is going to be 16. So it's no longer covering the side of this car. 16, 75, 75. Alright, and you'll notice though it is still not showing up underneath the car correctly. It's because it's facing the wrong direction. We need to rotate it on its y-axis 90 degrees. And now it's under the car. However, despite this being the size I use in my test file, it is not big enough, which actually happened in an earlier recording. So we're just going to go up to 120 by 120. And we now will set the icon to our good selection decal. Just make sure it shows up. Right. Well, hopefully it'll show up in game. If not, we'll come back and troubleshoot this. We are going to duplicate this. So right click or Control W. And this will be D Selected Decal. And the D Selected Decal will be the bad selection decal. And we're just going to go back and really quickly change out our rendering settings to match our master file for the unit, which will be visible as off on the selected and hidden in game is on for the selected decal. For the deselected decal, visible will be on, hidden will be off. Let's compile and save real quick, and let's just drag the car out to make sure, oh yeah, the decal is showing up and we can see it. I'm actually going to put the car a little bit to the right, or the left of the tree. I'm going to hit play real quick. Alright, yep, we can see the decal quite nicely. Okay, now you'll notice we can't select the car right now. So what we need to add is the code that will allow us to select the car. Well, first thing we're going to do is still in the ground unit master, or vehicle master. And it's going to be creating two functions that we've already created before. In fact, we're going to copy those functions. Part of the reason why getting these names correct matters. So these names, to make life easier, need to match the names inside your RTS unit master. So let's go to our event graph, and for both of these, by the way, and let's take a look at what we are going to need. I just closed up the folder I'm going to need, by the way. So we're going to need our selected decal and deselected decal. Sorry about that. So let's do the set selected decal first. Let's just copy everything that's in here minus the input node. Control C for copy. Go back to our ground unit and then do a new function of set selected decal. Let's paste that in. Let's hook that up, and let's put the return node at the end here. All right, there we go. Now, if the names are correct on these variables, then it will automatically get these pins correct. If these pins are grayed out, it means that the names are different, and therefore it can't create a reference, or it can't see this as being the same thing. So either you have to change the name or replace these nodes with new nodes. So let's make sure this is the correct one. We want the selected, so we don't want this to be visible. This is a deselected icon. We do want the deselect to be hidden. We wanted the selected to be visible and the not to be hidden. Good, that's correct. So let's do the next one, which is set deselected decal. And again, we're just going to go over to the version in our unit master. So we're going to our set deselected decal. And we will copy over everything again, minus that input node, directly into our unit master. And then again, we'll put that return node down on the end, just in case we need to, use it. And here we go. We have set selected decal as no longer visible, now hidden, and deselected as visible and no longer hidden. All right, compile and save. So now that our decals work, we can, again, just copy over the code we need to get the selection parts to work. And you'll find that, if you remember, inside our unit HUD for the marquee selection. Not unit HUD, sorry, our marquee selection HUD. All right. Now, there are 3 things we need to do. We need to be able to select the unit. We need to be able to send that unit information to the controller. And we need to be able to deselect and clear that unit from our active list. So, fortunately, we've done all of this before. It's fairly simple. It's going to be copying and pasting pretty much, or not even copying and pasting. We're just going to copy the logic of the code we've previously used. I thought I turned autosave off when I set up my repository. Guess I didn't. So, let's do the easiest of the 3 first. Let's take care of this set selected units. So, let's just go into this real quick. It'll take us into our player controller. And we are automatically inside the function set selected units. So let's highlight that input node, and we're going to add in another argument that we passed into it. And we're going to put in selected vehicles. And this will be of RTS ground vehicle master. It will also be an array. And we're going to come off of here, and we're going to promote this to a variable, and that variable will be selected ground vehicles. And we'll just hook this into there, hook that into there, and put a reroute in there, just so it's a little bit neater looking. So now when we pass this in, we're passing in our selected units and our selected ground vehicle units. Now, the only thing is, right now what we're saying is set selected is true, so we can use our right click if we have regular like infantry units, not if you have vehicles as well. So we need to set this for either or. So we're going to unhook this pin. We're going to drag it down here. We're going to type in or, and you'll see we have nor boolean, so it can't be this or that. We have an or boolean, and we have an x and or. Now, we just want the or boolean. We'll automatically just plug that back into there. So the or is now plugged into the condition. And off the second part of the or, what we want is to actually have the same idea of this, but with the ground unit. So we're just going to copy this, Control W, and then we will just pin that into there. We'll take our ground unit and pin that into the last index. So that takes care of receiving what our ground units are. We're going to move this into the category of unit control. There we go. So now that's in unit control. Going to create a new folder for the target location over here, and this is going to be unit movement. There we go. Compile and save. All right. So now we need to pass through an argument on selected vehicles. So let's drag off of this and let's promote to a variable, and that will be selected ground vehicles. There we go. So now we've passed that through. Right now that's an empty variable, however. So we need to set that variable. We also need to clear that variable. Well, here's our set code for the character. Now, this code is something we are just going to, one, clean up a bit, and two, well, not clean up in this episode, but clean up later on, but two, something we're just going to duplicate. First things first, though, I can't believe I did this. Unhook this from the draw marquee or wherever it was hooked into, and put it into then one. That's why we have a sequence there. All right, now this, to be a hint on the cleanup, this little bit of code is what we need to move to address the issue where we can select any unit on the screen just by touching it once, because this is in the wrong spot. What we are going to do is we're literally going to copy everything here, and we're going to save ourselves some time. Make sure I get everything. It loves being mean to me. And then you might need to move this further down if you haven't. I can't remember if I moved it or not. We're going to just do Control W to duplicate that down. And oh, that's not quite where I want it. Give me 1 second. Just move it so it's a little bit lined up nicely there. What we're going to do is, first things first, we're going to change this out from RTS Unit Master to RTS Ground Vehicle Master. So if there are ground vehicles in this area, then we want to add it to our new, well, actually we don't have a new variable yet there. So we need to create a new variable for this one. So we are going to actually drag off of this, and we are going to promote variable, and this will be ground vehicles in selection area. We'll delete the units in selection area, and we'll plug that pin, the array, into there, and the execute into there. And we'll just drag this out here, and that can go very nicely there. So what we then need to do is we need to check, well, for everything, is it a child of, well, not our unit master, but our vehicle, our ground vehicle master. All right, if it is, then we want to, well, not cast to this, so we'll delete this part right away. We'll come back here, and we'll cast to our ground vehicle master. So cast to RTS ground vehicle master if true. And if that is true, then we want to have our selected. So we're going to have a ground unit singular here. So ground, or selected vehicles, what we'll call this, singular. So we have selected ground vehicles. Ooh, didn't like that name. Selected ground vehicle singular. Selected ground vehicle. We'll plug that into our sequence. Same sequence, except for now we need to change out the selected unit and the selected units with our selected ground vehicles for the array, and our selected ground vehicle for the array element or array item. We need to change out this loop as well for, ooh, that reminds me, we skipped a step. So we need to change this out, and we're going to run into an error when we do this, because we forgot to add something. The selected units, let's delete that, with our selected ground units. Oh, we're running into an issue. So there's a compatibility issue, which is we forgot to do some stuff. So let's first off delete both of these. Let's just plug that into there. Now let's take a pause real quick to go to our ground vehicle master real quick and add in our boolean, which is selected. And this will go into our bool category. All right, we'll compile and save this one. If we go back to our marquee selection, we now should have everything working. So we can just drag off this array element. We can do set selected decal. We can plug that into there right away. Let's add in that reroute. We're going to drag off the reroute and do is selected. Scroll down to the bottom, we have get and is. So we want, or sorry, get and set. We want set. And we are going to set that to true. It is selected. Put a reroute in. Put another reroute in, because I know it's going to take two based on the one above there. And there we go. We have our selection set up. So now we can select a unit and pass that unit information on to our controller. Now we need to clear the, actually no, we haven't finished it. We have one more thing to do. We actually need to plug this in. So let's add pin, and let's just plug that in to make this look a little bit neater. We'll add a reroute in, and or I'll actually drag all of this. I've missed a bit at the top there, I know. So Control, and we'll just drag this out this way. Speaking of which, there are ways. I'll show you this little trick in a moment at the very end of the lesson. I also made a comment to myself to do so, so I will hopefully remember. If not, it'll be the start of the next video. So what we need to do now is deselect our units. And this is where it gets a bit tricky, a bit messy looking. And not tricky in terms of complex, just a bit tricky in terms of, oh god, it's really messy looking. Which is why collapsing things to functions is often very useful, or collapsing things to macros is very useful. So the first thing we really need to do, though, is we need to clear out any sort of, or we need to get rid of this pen for a minute. We need then to move the on begin play all the way up this way, just so it's not in our way. We're going to come back in here, and off this true branch, well, everything else is going to remain the same. You know, we're actually just going to unpin that. We want that reroute still, by the way. And we're just going to take this, and we're going to move this all the way up here. Off this reroute, what we're going to do is we're going to drag off of it, and we're going to do a sequence. And we're just going to set the sequence about here. And the first thing off that sequence will be the part we just moved. We're going to just move it that way so it's a little bit further out. Put the reroute there so that it's a little bit neater again so we can see what path it's following. Alright, we're literally going to do the same code over again, however, except for we're going to change everything out to our ground units. Now, because we have to delete a lot of these things at the end outside of the set controller reference here, it's easier just to redo this one. So we'll take our selected ground units, drag it in, get our ground vehicle, that is, for each loop. So remember what a for each loop does. It goes through every element, every item in this array, and executes a statement, so the loop body part, if there is a valid element in that array. So, you know, it doesn't even have to execute a statement in relation to that element. It could execute something else, you know. For every vehicle in here, you know, flash on the screen, bright colors. And it can randomize the colors, for example. All right, so the first thing we're going to do is we are going to set D Selected Decal. All right, so now that we've deselected that decal, put a reroute into there. And then we'll do is selected again. We'll scroll down to get set is selected. Put 2 more reroutes in, because again, I know it's going to take 3 total on this to make it pretty. Drag that into there. And, ooh, I got the wrong reroute. I hate when I do that. And just set all the pins up so it looks a little bit nicer and neater and more professional looking. There we go. All right, and then we'll take a reference to our controller, and we can just copy this one, make our life a little bit easier. Control W, duplicate, pin that into there. Next, we're going to take our selected ground vehicles again. We're going to get it, and we're going to drag off of here, and we're going to do clear. And then we are going to place that through there, and then pin that into the set clicked location. Now, the reason why we do not need to do the same thing with our for loop here, why we don't need to drag down here and point it into there, is it will go through both of these. So it'll go through the then 0 pin. It will see, all right, now we're done with this pin. Let's go on to this one. Even if there are no ground vehicles in here, it's going to go, hey, there's nothing in here. We're completed. So it's going to go through here. This will clear out nothing. And then it will take care of this. All right. So let's compile and save. And there's a little bit of cleanup I want to do before the next lesson, just because the next one is going to take up so much time. It's easier to spend the next couple of minutes just addressing it now. So let's close this out. Let's close out our unit master. Let's close out our ground vehicle. And let's go to our player controller. Alright, so let's get rid of this is selected unit. We don't need to work with the construction script. We don't need the HUD. Oh my god, I have so many of these things open. And, well, that's going to be one thing that's going to be different between your code and my code. I forgot to delete that. So let me very quickly, yeah, it's the same code, by the way, delete this. This is something we're going to make right now, but it's also incorrect. It has the bug in it that I want to get rid of. So let's go back to the event graph, and what we're going to do is we're going to actually collapse, as you saw, this down to a macro just to give us some space. But before we do so, we're going to add in a feature that will be a bit redundant, but it will help us out to prevent any sort of read none errors. And what we're going to do, and why it's going to be redundant, is we're going to do a check to make sure that we actually have units selected. Now you're going, well, we have this. We have, is this unit selected, true or false? Why do we need a check already on the true part? Well, the reason for that, if we take a look at our selected units, what we have here is it's selected if it is either a regular infantry unit or a construction unit, or if it's a vehicle. So the problem then is when we come here and when we add in our vehicle branch, it's not going to know, hey, I'm doing this because there's a vehicle, or I'm doing this because there is a ground unit, or I'm doing it because there's both. And so it's going to try to execute everything for each of them without this double check. And if you only have ground units selected, or sorry, you only have vehicle units selected and not ground units, you're going to get a read none error at the end of that, because it's still trying to execute all of this for ground units, even if you have none selected. So we're going to unhook that pin there, and we're going to drag this out. I had the lurking suspicion I had this in an earlier lesson, and I removed it, and I just forgot why I included it, and this would be the reason why. And we're going to put it in branch, and all we're going to do is we're going to plug the true into there. We're going to ignore the false. If false happens, we want it to move on to the next part. Alright, so off this condition, what we are going to do is we're going to do less than or equal to integer. So integer less than or equal to integer. And we'll put the reroute pin into here. Just drag this up that way. Alright, so what we want to know is our array for ground unit, or is the last element in our array from ground vehicles, or not ground vehicles, from our selected units. It'll also be the same for ground vehicles too. Is it greater or equal to 1? So I'll take our selected units. That's why I didn't like the name earlier. I see. I have to fix that. So in case you have a different name than me, then we'll take care of that all in a second. We are going to get last index. And again, we want to know if this last index is greater than or equal to 0. If it is, then execute all of this stuff. If not, go on to the then branch, which also probably should have a thing for that as well. However, actually, you know what? Looking at this, what we're going to do is we're going to move this location just a tiny bit. What we're going to do is we're going to unhook this, if it'll let me. We're going to drag all of this way. And I'm going to conceptually show you what we're going to do in the next episode. We're going to put another sequence node in here. So this sequence node will control, so 0 will be infantry units, 1 will be vehicles. So we already know that 0 is going to be, this sort of, ground units. Let's just delete that actually, or cut that out and put that over here instead, and plug that into there. If this point this is true, then run everything related to the ground units. Sorry about that. I just thought of a better place to put it as I was recording this. These things happen though. We all make these sort of realizations as we're doing things, and that's perfectly fine. You know, if you realize there's a better way to do something, go ahead and change it. Make it work. Let us know. Okay, so it still spawns in the decal. We can actually highlight all of this now, and we can collapse this down to a macro, and this will be unit movement. Remember, this movement up here, this category is for our camera movement. We might want to consider renaming those categories. So now we have unit movement. In the next episode, we will do our vehicle movement. But let's quickly take care of this issue. So let me find references to this. Let me find references to that. Alright, I don't know why I have selected ground units. Let me just delete this thing and then find references to this. Okay, so everything seems to be right then. Alright, now that we've done that, let's test it out. Let's make sure, one, we can select our car, and two, that the characters that the regular units still move around. So here we are in the map. We can see the red icon under the car. We draw the highlight feature. The car is now selected. Let's go into our player controller real quick. And let's go to our event graph. Actually, sorry, we want to go to our selected units. And we want to turn the debugger to RTS player controller and just check. Yep, there is one item in that array in spot 0. Good. Okay, well, joys of that camera is spinning around on me. And unfortunately, we don't have any commands that we can give our car yet because, well, we haven't written those in. As I said, we'll do that next week. But we should also make sure that our ground units still will move around as needed. Ooh, so there's a bit of an issue, so let's very quickly clean that issue up. So it is one of those ones that's a bit weird. And I tried a couple of solutions. The one that I found that's the easiest to do is we just move this over here. Sorry, I didn't mean to move it back. We are going to unhook this sequence real quick, and we're actually going to get all of this, and we're just going to cut it from here for now. We're going to plug the 1 into the stop motion, and we're going to highlight everything over here, drag it a tiny bit that way, and then paste back in our for each loop. So for each, we want to do all of these things. And we'll plug that into loop body. This will go down here. Put a reroute in. And let's test this out, make sure it works. So we hit play. And spawn in 2 units. We have 2. Yep, the icon is reappearing. Let me change the lighting. By the way, to turn the lighting off like that, all you do is hit F2. If you want wire, F1. F2, no lighting. F3, lit. F4 is this, I can't remember the name of this one, but you can actually see the lighting where the sky sphere is, or the sky lighting is, sorry. And we have our max shader complexity. Let's go back to our unlit though. So, yep, it is working. Awesome. I'm getting no other bugs. If you get a bug with this, please let me know, and we will try to address that as quickly as possible. Okay, so the other thing that's what I wanted to show you was a little trick. So let's say you comment something. You want to comment, you know, everything up to destroy component, but you don't want to comment stop movement. But you've done this, and you're having issues resizing it. And every time you try to move it, you're grabbing everything. Well, what you can do is you can hold on the shift key. You can just move it that way. You can even take it off, and there you go. So if you hold on shift and then click, you can do things like, you know, instead of having that, you could have that. Alright, I thought that was just a neat little trick, and I thought I'd show you that. So the next video most likely will be split into 2 parts, and that will be adding in movement for the car back there, or for our ground vehicle. Because right now the only movement it has is if we get a whole bunch of NPCs together, and I did this in an earlier version, and I thought it was hilarious, so I'm going to do it again, together and swarm the car with them. The car will get pushed back just by the sheer mass of people on top of it, which is just hilarious to think about. Unselect that unit. So yeah, if you have anything you want to see in this series, please put a comment down below. You know, I do pay attention to those comments to give you an idea. Remember that these vehicles are only being added in because they were requested. And if you want me to know anything that works for you in the series that doesn't work for you, if you're running into bugs, again, comments are the best place to kind of let me know. And they're not gonna push the car. Let's get them this way. All right, come on, I'll come forward. But yeah, comments are the best place to let me know. That way, there we go. Get behind the car this time. Oh, you're not gonna make it. Yeah, sorry, I'm easily amused, as you can tell by my herd of humans running after their car. That car is gonna go forever. So comments are the best place to let me know what works for you, what doesn't work for you, if you want me to add anything into the series. Also, make sure to drop a like if you like this video. It helps get this series out there to people who might not have known about it otherwise. And in addition to that, I really hope to see you in the next lesson where we actually give this vehicle its proper movement controls. And we can actually get it doing some fun things. As always, I hope that you have a wonderful day.